I followed my wife to the company couple's dinner and saw her arriving with her boss, and at that moment something inside me broke in a way I never imagined possible. My steps became heavy as if each one would sink into the floor, and my mind repeated over and over the only question I needed to ask: why? Why with me, why with our family, why after so many years of companionship and love that I believed to be unshakable? I walked towards them trying to hold my breath, feeling my heart racing as if it wanted to jump out of my chest and escape from what my eyes had just witnessed. When I finally stood face to face with her and her eyes met mine, petrified with fear, I only managed to let out the words that tore through my throat like blades: "I thought you loved me. If you didn't love me, why didn't you tell me before?" And in that freezing second, the silence that settled between us was so deafening that I could hear the sound of my life falling apart. Every smile, every night we fell asleep holding hands, every promise we had made during years of marriage crumbled there, before the curious gaze of other couples who arrived at the illuminated restaurant, while my mind spun in a whirlwind of anger, pain and a disappointment that seemed infinite. I didn't wait for any answer, because there was nothing more to be said, and I turned my back, leaving behind the echo of her silence, as empty and cold as the betrayal I had just witnessed. I returned home with a heavy head and trembling hands, reliving every detail of our story like a cruel movie that refused to stop playing, remembering the moments when I felt like the most loved man in the world and how I was deceived in each of them. I opened the door to our home and felt the familiar smell that once brought me comfort now suffocating me like smoke from an impossible fire to put out. I went to our bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed where I had so often declared my unconditional love and cried in silence, because there was no room for screaming, only for the cutting pain that burned my soul. I decided there, between tears and memories, that I would not accept sharing my life with the person who stabbed me in the back, and I began to write the letter that would change everything, the divorce letter that would bring an end to a marriage that I thought would last forever, but that for her was nothing more than a setting for a painful farce. The next morning, as the sun rose with cruel indifference to my suffering, I left the letter on the table with the hardest decision I have ever made in my life, but also the most necessary to save my sanity. As I left the house, I looked one last time at the photo frames on the shelf, photos of trips, birthdays and Christmases that now seemed like ghosts mocking my naivety, and in that moment I understood that love is not enough when respect dies, that any relationship built on lies is doomed to collapse with the force of an earthquake that destroys everything around it. I left carrying the certainty that it was not I who should feel ashamed, but she, who exchanged an entire family for moments of empty passion, who believed it was possible to rebuild trust after betraying her so coldly. When she got home, she found only emptiness and the letter, and days later, when she received the news that hurt her more than anything could, our children preferred to live with me, that the hugs and kisses she had always taken for granted were now mine, that the innocent voices that called out for mother every night now asked only for me. The punishment of betrayal began to reveal itself cruel and deep, like a crack that never stops growing and consuming everything around it. I, who before thought my world had ended, began to see that there was still life, that there was still true love to be rebuilt, far from the lies that poisoned our home. Meanwhile, she tried to pick up the pieces of a broken heart, but she discovered every day that some damage is irreversible, that some choices cost more than any price that can be paid. I saw her cry at the door of her house, begging for forgiveness, saying that it had all been a mistake, that she deeply regretted it and that she couldn't live without me or her children, but her voice seemed to echo in a tunnel of memories of sleepless nights, when I waited for messages that never arrived, when I searched in her eyes for the same passion that once existed, but was now focused on another man. I remembered every time I lay down next to her, feeling that something was wrong, but not having the courage to face the truth. I remembered how I trusted blindly, how I built every detail of our house thinking of the two of us, how I made plans to grow old with her, how I imagined that one day we would laugh together about everything we faced, without knowing that she was already silently dreaming of another life, with another man. The nights that used to be full of comfort became filled with nightmares, with dreams in which I saw her walking away holding his hand, smiling as if I had never existed. I began to wonder if she had ever truly loved me, or if I had just been her safe haven while she tried to find what she really wanted. This doubt ate away at me, kept me awake at night, and even made me question my worth as a man, as a husband, as a father. But it was when I saw her trying to resume her role as a mother that I realized there was no going back. Our children, who had always looked at her with admiration, now looked at her coldly, saying in small but firm voices that they preferred to stay with me, that they no longer trusted her, that they felt betrayed too, as if each of them had been stabbed in the back in silence. Her regret grew like a dark shadow that enveloped her more each day, making each attempt at reconciliation more pathetic and desperate, while I, with my heart still bleeding, began to find a thread of hope within myself, to understand that I didn't need to beg for love from someone who didn't know how to value what they had. I began to dedicate every free minute to my children, to show them that a real man doesn't need to accept disrespect to keep a family together, that sometimes the true proof of love is knowing when to say goodbye, no matter how much it hurts. I began to feel proud of my strength, of my ability to rebuild my life from scratch, even with all the ghosts haunting me with every memory, even with the sound of her voice begging me echoing in my mind like a sad melody. Over time, I began to realize that the weight of the lies she carried was greater than anything I could bear, and that each tear she shed was just a late reflection of regret, incapable of healing the wounds that bled inside me. I learned that betrayal destroys more than a marriage. It destroys dreams, suffocates hopes and corrodes the soul of those who believed in love above all else. And deep down, I knew that even though there was still a spark of feeling inside me, it was impossible to build anything on the rubble of so much pain. Life began to smile at me again when I discovered that I no longer needed to live in fear of being betrayed, when I felt that I deserved someone who loved me with the same intensity that I had always loved. Then, one weekend, I went to pick up my children for an outing and, as I waited at the door, I heard laughter coming from inside her house. Childish laughter, but not of joy. When my children left, pale and silent, it was impossible not to notice how uncomfortable they were at even looking at their mother. Along the way, they told me that she tried to play, but they could no longer trust her, that every time they saw her, they remembered what she had done to me, that they were afraid that it would happen again. It was at that moment that I understood the depth of the destruction caused by betrayal, that it had not only broken my heart, but also our children's, that the safe home we had promised together could never be rebuilt as long as the lie was between us. That same day, when she handed the children over to me the following weekend, she tried to smile, but the awkwardness between her and her children was so heavy that the words stuck in her throat. I saw in her eyes the terror of someone who finally realized that she had lost everything, that the hugs she took for granted no longer sought her out, that the little hearts that idolized her now beat with fear and distrust. It was then that I realized the true karma that betrayal brings. There is no greater punishment than being rejected by the one you love most, by the one you gave birth to, raised, and cradled in your arms. And while she struggled with her regret, I discovered the serenity of someone who is reborn from their own ashes, of someone who builds a new life for themselves and their children, free of lies and ready to truly love again. But can the pain she caused ever be forgiven? Can true love overcome the scars of such a devastating betrayal? Or is the only way to protect yourself and your children by moving on, leaving behind even the memories of what was once happiness? Welcome to the channel. Here, we never support any type of betrayal. Our stories are fictional and serve to show how infidelity destroys lives, dreams, and families. Get ready to dive into an intense and shocking story that will make you reflect on the true value of loyalty. Enjoy the story and hold on tight, because what comes next will shake your heart. Jason had always been a man who valued the silence of the mornings and the routine that he himself had helped to build with effort and dedication over 2 decades of marriage. He was tall, with brown hair that was beginning to show gray strands at the temples, something that, for him, did not represent the weight of age, but the mark of each battle won to give his family a dignified and comfortable life. He liked to wake up before sunrise to smell the coffee he was preparing in the kitchen he had renovated to please his wife, while listening to the soft sound of the birds landing in the backyard. He took pleasure in preparing breakfast for his children, Michael, 10, and Lily, 8, who would come down the stairs still sleepy, but would light up when they saw him waiting with warm pancakes. For Jason, those minutes were the greatest gift that life could offer, watching his children grow up surrounded by love and stability, hearing their laughter echo through the house that he and his wife, Amanda, had chosen with such care. Amanda, on the other hand, was a woman with a striking presence. Her smile lit up any room and her easy laugh won over even the most grumpy of people. She had always been very vain, liked to take care of her hair and nails, and chose every detail of her daily look, not only for herself, but because she believed that this was a way of showing respect for those around her. Amanda devoted herself to her children with attention, organized every school commitment, every sporting event, and seemed to have an almost magical ability to remember dates, appointments, and homework. She had a special way of encouraging Jason not to give up when difficulties at work arose, hugged him tightly on days when he came home exhausted and told him that everything would be okay. She made him feel invincible, as if nothing could shake the family they had built together. They lived in a white-fronted house with an impeccable garden in a residential neighborhood where children still played in the street and neighbors exchanged cakes and coffees on weekends. The house, spacious and comfortable, was full of memories, framed travel photos in the living room, toys scattered in the corners, handprints painted on the hallway wall by Amanda, who had thought of making them with the children one rainy Sunday. Every corner told the story of a family that, to anyone looking from the outside, seemed perfect and happy. Jason was proud of every inch of that home, from the green lawn he patiently mowed on Saturdays, to the organized garage, to the bedroom he painted blue when Michael was born, to the pink room full of unicorns that Amanda decorated for Lily. The couple's routine was carefully structured so that there would be time for family and their relationship. Every Wednesday, they made sure to have dinner just the two of them, even if it was at home, by candlelight, to talk about the week, laugh at the children's antics and remember the beginning of their story, when they met at a party with mutual friends and, as Jason liked to say, all it took was one look to know that she was the one he wanted forever. Fridays were reserved for the children, popcorn, Disney movies and makeshift cabins in the living room that made Michael and Lily believe that their home was the best place in the world. On Sundays, they all went to Mass together, and then had lunch at the children's favorite restaurant, a small family bistro that served homemade pasta. Jason worked as a project manager at a medium-sized construction company and was respected by everyone who knew him for his ethics and competence. He had colleagues who admired him, clients who trusted him, and superiors who saw him as an example of calm and efficient leadership. Amanda was an executive assistant at a multinational company, known for her friendliness and efficiency, always praised by her boss for knowing how to deal with crises and keep all commitments on track. Both had stable careers, achieved through mutual effort and support from each other. When Amanda had to take a course in another state, Jason held the fort at home without complaining, and when Jason had to work late on an important project, Amanda made sure to bring a warm dinner to the office to remind him that he was not alone. Their relationship was one of complicity, glances that didn't require words, secrets whispered in the dead of night, lingering kisses in the kitchen while coffee was brewing, muffled laughter when remembering embarrassing moments that only made sense to them. Jason still felt his heart race when he saw Amanda coming into the house, and she was proud of the hard-working and loving husband she had by her side. Together, they had plans. They talked about buying a country house for vacation, dreamed of traveling to Europe with their children, enthusiastically planned the children's birthdays, and made sure to involve Michael and Lily in all family decisions, so that they would grow up knowing the value of dialogue and love. On weekends, the house would be a haven of joy, the radio would play old songs chosen by Jason, Amanda would dance around the living room with the kids, play games in the backyard, and have impromptu barbecues with friends and family. In everyone's eyes, they were the perfect couple, who seemed to have discovered the secret to keeping the flame alive even after years of marriage, who showed affection in public and spoke proudly of each other. The children, in turn, were a reflection of this loving home, well-mannered, happy, confident, and with a sparkle in their eyes that only those who grow up surrounded by affection can have. The little moments of everyday life were special to Jason and Amanda. They woke up early to pack lunches together, took turns driving the kids to school, and used the rides to share secrets about the week. At night, they read bedtime stories to Michael and Lily, each taking turns using funny voices to bring the characters to life. When the kids finally fell asleep, it was as if the world stopped and it was just the two of them, curled up on the couch, talking about the future or simply savoring the comfortable silence that only those who truly love each other can share. Amanda had a knack for seeing the best in people and was well liked by everyone in the neighborhood. She would organize charity events, helped neighbors in need, and always had a smile ready for anyone who needed a word of encouragement. Jason, on the other hand, was the kind of man everyone trusted. He was always willing to help anyone who needed a ride, fix something that broke in someone else's house, or just listen quietly when someone needed to vent. They formed a strong, close-knit team that seemed unshakable. When Christmas came, their home became a spectacle of lights, decorations, and aromas that made any guest feel welcome. The 6-foot tree was set up by the family, with each ornament carrying a special memory: their first trip together, Michael's birth, Lily's first day of school. Christmas dinners were full of food, but mostly full of affection, with everyone gathered around the table while Jason gave loud thanks for the family he had and Amanda smiled with pride. It was in those moments that they both felt that everything made sense, that any effort in their daily lives was worth it to keep it alive. In their neighborhood, they were seen as an exemplary couple, and many sought out Amanda and Jason for advice on marriage, raising children, or simply to hear words of optimism. They didn't mind sharing their experiences, as they believed that helping others was also a way to further strengthen their own union. Michael and Lily learned from their parents not only about kindness and respect, but also about the importance of fighting for the ones you love, about the need to persevere through difficult times, and to celebrate together every victory, no matter how small. Amanda and Jason's relationship had its ups and downs, like any real relationship, but they always found the strength to work through the problems by talking until late, lying side by side, holding hands as if they refused to let go. They believed that a happy marriage was built this way, brick by brick, day after day, even when the walls shook under the weight of worries or when fatigue threatened to extinguish the flame of desire. They both knew that, above all, true love needed to be nurtured with patience, companionship and constant dedication. The neighborhood where they lived was safe and welcoming, with wide streets, tree-lined parks, and quality schools, hand-picked so that Michael and Lily could grow up in a healthy environment. There, Jason and Amanda made a point of attending school meetings, end-of-year parties, sports competitions, and all the little achievements that were part of their children's childhood. They celebrated the participation medals, the drawings stuck on the refrigerator, and the end-of-year presentations that brought tears to their eyes. For them, the greatest achievement was seeing their children become good, happy people. Among his friends, Jason was always remembered as a man of integrity, who never shied away from his responsibilities and who did everything he could to see his wife and children smile. Amanda, on the other hand, was admired for her contagious energy and the way she transformed routine into something special. She had the gift of turning an ordinary dinner into an unforgettable evening, of transforming a rainy afternoon into magical moments with hot chocolate and made-up stories. For them, there was no such thing as monotony. Each day was an opportunity to create a new memory, to strengthen the bonds that united them as a couple and as a family. The bond they had built over the years led many people to believe that nothing could separate them, that their love was stormproof. They had plans for the future. They talked about traveling the world when their children grew up, buying a trailer to explore the country on vacation, taking courses together to learn new skills and keep the flame of curiosity alive. Jason dreamed of writing a book telling the story of how they fell in love, while Amanda imagined opening a small cafe to welcome friends and strangers with homemade cakes and inspiring stories. To the outsider, Amanda and Jason had everything you could want: love, stability, a happy home, healthy children, mutual respect, and shared dreams. They seemed made for each other, and even their disagreements ended in kisses and hugs, as if their fights were just reminders that they were both human, with fears, insecurities, and limitations. They believed, above all, that the basis of everything was respect, and they always said that as long as there was respect, there would be room for any difficulty to be overcome. But, amidst so many happy moments and plans for the future, no one could have imagined that a simple change in routine, an almost imperceptible detail, would begin to open invisible cracks in the solid foundation they had built together. No one could have guessed that small silences would become abysses, that forced smiles would turn into heavy masks, and that, deep down, hearts that were once intertwined would begin to beat in increasingly distant rhythms. Still, at that moment, everyone believed that Jason and Amanda were the perfect portrait of true love, of a family that would remain united until the end. The days began to slip through Jason's fingers like dry sand, each morning appearing quieter than the last, as if time itself conspired to show that something had changed. Amanda, who used to be the first to smile and wish him a good morning, began to be late more often, justifying herself with last-minute meetings or unavoidable commitments that forced her to rush out without even sitting down to have breakfast with him and the children. The smell of fresh coffee, which used to bring the family together in the kitchen, was replaced by the cold aroma of a house that woke up incomplete, where Michael and Lily's small, hurried footsteps echoed like painful reminders that something was out of place. Jason tried not to show his worries, forcing smiles as he said goodbye to his children, but his heart was already throbbing with the seed of distrust, germinating on sleepless nights in which he tossed and turned in bed, wondering where and with whom his wife could be. At night, when Amanda returned home, her perfume seemed different, stronger, as if she were trying to hide some scent she shouldn't be carrying. She talked about trivial matters, described the traffic, mentioned coworkers Jason had never heard of before, and laughed at jokes she didn't fully explain, leaving incomplete stories hanging in the air that made her husband feel even more distant. Jason began to notice that she hid her cell phone, even taking it to the bathroom or sleeping with it under her pillow, a habit he had never had before. On Sundays, when they were supposed to be together, Amanda would offer to go to the grocery store alone, claiming to want to give Jason a break so he could rest, but she would take hours and return with bags that didn't justify so much time away. His mind, once peaceful, became a battlefield where happy memories dueled against dark thoughts that insisted on growing. As the weeks went by, Jason noticed that the goodnight kisses became shorter, that the hugs became formal, without the tenderness that enveloped them like a second skin. The children began to question why Amanda was not present at important moments, the parents' meeting at school, Lily's violin performance, Michael's soccer game, occasions that had always been celebrated as a family and that now echoed hollowly without her presence. Jason tried to do his best to keep the smile on his face, but each question from his children pierced his chest as if they were slowly tearing away the certainties he had built alongside Amanda. He searched for some spark of sincerity in his wife's eyes, but found only a distant expression, as if she were physically present, but her soul was somewhere else. One particularly difficult night, Jason decided to surprise her and left work early to prepare a special dinner, remembering their Wednesday traditions. He cooked her favorite dish, played the music that accompanied their first kiss, and filled the house with the cozy aroma of spices. The children helped set the table, excited about the possibility of reliving happy family nights, but the hours passed and Amanda did not answer his calls or respond to his messages. When she finally arrived, close to midnight, she claimed a last-minute commitment that had lasted longer than she expected, quickly apologizing as she went upstairs to take a shower. Jason's gaze followed her every step, noticing that her tone of voice seemed rehearsed, and that the sparkle of complicity in her eyes had disappeared like the sun in an eclipse that no one can predict. Another night, when Jason unexpectedly picked Amanda up from work, he had to wait in the car for almost an hour, watching the lights in the building go out until only a lit window on the top floor remained. When she appeared, she got out accompanied by a man in a dark suit, laughing at something he had whispered in her ear. Jason felt his blood boil in his veins, but he didn't have the courage to get out of the car. Instead, he watched, motionless, as they said goodbye with a long hug that went beyond the limits of what is acceptable between colleagues. He returned home with shaking hands and the bitter taste of betrayal starting to become real, trying to find a rational explanation that would dispel what his eyes had witnessed. All night long, he walked around the house like a ghost, revisiting every corner where they had laughed, cried, dreamed together, and silently asking himself where he had gone wrong. In the days that followed, the tension between the couple became so intense that even the children noticed, avoiding being in the same room when their parents were together, exchanging worried glances and staying silent in their games. Jason began to notice details that had not existed before, receipts from restaurants he had never been to, messages deleted from Amanda's cell phone, makeup touched up for no apparent reason, perfumes that were different from the ones she usually wore. He tried to talk, to ask if everything was okay, but Amanda always changed the subject or got irritated at any question, turning simple conversations into disjointed arguments that ended with slamming doors and deathly silence. In a desperate attempt to get back to normal, Jason proposed a family trip to the coast, something they did every year to celebrate the children's holidays. Amanda hesitated, inventing work commitments that would prevent her from accompanying them, and suggested that he go alone with Michael and Lily, as if temporarily separating would be the solution to bring them closer together. Jason felt his heart break, but forced a smile so as not to scare his children, promising that they would have a fun trip anyway. During the days at the beach, he tried to distract himself with the children's genuine joy, but each sunset he watched alone reminded him of Amanda's absent presence and how their family seemed to be quietly disintegrating, like a sandcastle washed away by the tide. One day, no longer able to deal with the anguish that was eating away at his chest, Jason decided to talk to a longtime friend, someone he trusted completely. He opened up like he had never done before, telling her about Amanda's changes, her empty nights, and her suspicions that were becoming increasingly unbearable. His friend listened in silence, looking at him with compassion, and advised him to look for concrete evidence before making any decision, because sometimes the mind plays cruel tricks. Jason returned home determined to understand the truth, to face whatever it was, because uncertainty consumed him more than any pain he could feel. So he began to observe Amanda more closely, looking for signs that would confirm or refute his fears, recording times, words, gestures, every little detail that could reveal what she was hiding. The height of his distrust came one cloudy morning, when he found Amanda's coat on the living room armchair and, as he picked it up to hang it up, he noticed a strange smell, different from her perfume, a masculine aroma that made his stomach churn as if he had been punched. He stood still for a few seconds, feeling his throat close up, while dark thoughts exploded in his mind like lightning in the middle of a storm. It was at that moment that he decided he needed a definitive answer, that he could no longer bear to live between half-words and cutting silences. He secretly made an appointment with a lawyer to understand what his rights would be and how to protect his children if the truth was as cruel as he feared, and he began to plan how he would confront Amanda, but only when he was absolutely sure of what was happening. The following week, he decided to follow Amanda after she left for the supposed business dinner she claimed to have with colleagues from the company. Jason's heart was beating so fast it felt like it wanted to rip out of his chest, his hands were sweating and the steering wheel was slipping between his fingers as he discreetly followed her through the streets lit only by the headlights of cars and the windows of already closed stores. When he saw Amanda park in front of an elegant restaurant, his entire body shivered. He watched from afar as she got out of the car and then a man approached, opening the door for her with too much intimacy to be just a colleague. Jason watched the two enter arm in arm, with smiles that were not exchanged between strangers, and there, in that moment, the world seemed to stop, the air became heavy and the certainty that he had been betrayed crushed his soul like a rock. With heavy steps, he crossed the street towards the restaurant, ignoring the light rain that was beginning to fall as if the sky was mourning him. He opened the door and walked between the elegantly arranged tables, feeling all eyes turn to him as if they sensed the storm that was about to explode. When he saw Amanda, sitting with the man, both laughing with raised glasses, he felt the world collapse beneath his feet. They noticed his presence almost at the same time, and the silence that fell seemed to echo to the last wall of the room. The waiter, confused, froze with the tray in his hands. Amanda's eyes widened, her mouth opening in an almost request for an explanation, but Jason just stopped in front of them, breathing heavily, and all he could say was that he never imagined she would be capable of throwing away everything they had built together. Amanda's gaze, once so full of life, filled with panic and shame. The man in front of him retreated in his chair, as if to hide from the silent judgment that hung over the trio. The other couples began to whisper, and the previously welcoming atmosphere turned into a stage of unbearable tension. Jason felt his legs weaken, but he remained standing, seeking strength in every memory of what they had lived, while understanding, with each second that dragged by, that life as he knew it had come to an end. With a choked voice, he told Amanda that this was the end for them, and left the restaurant, ignoring her calls that echoed hollowly amidst the soft music that continued to play, indifferent to the drama that had just exploded. As he walked down the wet sidewalk, feeling the rain mix with the hot tears streaming from his eyes, Jason understood that the pain of betrayal was deeper than any heartbreak he had ever suffered. But something inside him began to solidify, a silent determination that he needed to protect himself and his children from the abyss into which Amanda had dragged them. And yet without knowing it, the consequences of that night were only beginning to shape what would become the most revealing moment of his life. Jason woke up that morning with his body exhausted and his mind buzzing, the memory of the previous night throbbing like an open wound that bled with each beat of his heart. The clock struck 7 when he got up, going straight to the children's room, finding Michael and Lily still asleep, their peaceful faces in contrast to the storm that had settled in his chest. He went downstairs, picked up the folder with the documents he had been gathering since he decided to confront Amanda, and took a deep breath before dialing the lawyer's number, scheduling a meeting for that afternoon. He knew he needed to act quickly, because there was much more at stake than just his own pride. There was the future of his children, their emotional stability, and the security of a home that could no longer exist as it was. Over coffee, Jason thought about how he would reveal everything, how he would show his wife that his lies had reached their limit and that the truth, naked and raw, was about to swallow everything that was left of that family. Amanda showed up shortly before lunch, her eyes marked by dark circles that didn't match the woman who was always careful with her appearance. She entered the house silently, avoiding Jason's gaze, as if she feared what she might find on his face. He watched her with an almost frightening serenity, as if he no longer needed explanations. While the children played in the backyard, Jason invited Amanda to sit at the kitchen table, the place where so many important conversations had taken place over the years. The silence between them was thick, and when she finally dared to ask what was going on, he opened the folder on the table, spreading out photos, written schedules, receipts of nights out, records of messages exchanged on apps. Amanda turned pale, her lips trembling, but before she could stammer out any justification, Jason raised his hand, asking for silence, because he needed her to hear everything before any defense. He began to describe in detail the moments when he noticed her absence, the inconsistent apologies, the days when he saw her differently, the nights when he pretended to sleep while she snuck out. His voice was firm, but the tone carried the pain of someone who had been betrayed deep down in his soul. Amanda tried to interrupt, but Jason's words crushed her as if each sentence were a hammer blow in her attempts to stay on her feet. He then stood up, went to the window and looked at the children playing, taking a deep breath before turning to face her with a calm that only despair could bring, telling her that there was no longer any trust between them and that he had made the decision to start the divorce process immediately. Tears began to stream down her face, but Jason's gaze remained unbroken, as if the man who loved her had died that night she met him at the restaurant. The air grew heavy as Amanda, crying convulsively, knelt before him, holding his hands as if she wanted to grasp the last crumbs of hope, begging for forgiveness, saying that she had made a mistake, that she had been weak, that she felt lost, that she loved only him and that everything that had happened had been nothing more than a terrible mistake. For a brief moment, Jason felt the weight of every good memory pressing down on his heart, but soon he remembered the nights alone, the heartbreaking doubts, the embrace that never had warmth again and the promises that had shattered like glass. He slowly let go of her hands, saying that the love that existed between them had died the exact moment she chose another path, that words would not be enough to glue together the pieces of what had been destroyed. Amanda cried non-stop, the sound of her sobs mixing with the distant song of the birds in the backyard, creating a cruel contrast between the serenity of the world and the chaos that reigned within those walls. Jason then approached her and, in a low but firm tone, told her that there was something else, something Amanda needed to know, something that made everything even more painful and final. He said that in the last few days, when he had talked to his children about the impending separation, he had expected to encounter resistance, fear, or confusion, but instead he had heard from them words that had shattered what was left of his heart. Michael, with the trembling voice of someone still too young to carry so much weight, confessed that he no longer wanted to live with his mother, that he felt uncomfortable when he was alone with her, that her lies gave him nightmares at night. Lily, with the cutting sincerity of a child who had not yet learned to lie to protect the feelings of adults, said that she preferred to live with her father because he was the one who made her feel safe, the one who truly cared for her, the one who dried her tears when Amanda was not home. Jason revealed that they had both asked him, with tears in their eyes, not to have to stay with their mother after the separation, that they were more afraid of losing their father than anything else in the world. Amanda seemed to collapse in on herself, her body shaking as if at any moment it would fall to pieces on the floor. Her eyes widened in panic, her hands moved aimlessly, and her voice came out in a hoarse whisper, almost inaudible, asking if that was true, if her children had really said those words. Jason just nodded, holding back his own tears so as not to show weakness at a moment when he needed to be stronger than ever. Amanda stood up abruptly, walked to the window and watched Michael and Lily running through the yard, their laughter sounding like knives in her heart, understanding for the first time the size of the price she would have to pay for her choices. She leaned her forehead against the glass, her hands flat against the window, and began to murmur to herself that she could not live without them, that she needed to find a way to win them back, but she knew, deep down, that maybe it was too late. The atmosphere in the house became suffocating, each breath was heavy, each second seemed to drag by with the cruel slowness of someone who knows the worst is yet to come. Jason, his heart broken, approached her and said that he would not stop her from seeing her children, but that he would fight with all his might to have primary custody, because he would not allow them to grow up amidst lies and deception. Amanda turned to him, her eyes red and wide, and began to babble pleas for forgiveness, promises to change, offers to do anything to fix the irreparable, but Jason just watched her, silent, feeling as if he were facing a stranger. Amidst her desperate pleas, he remembered every night he waited awake, every morning when he felt the cold bed beside him, every time he searched for answers in her eyes and found only walls. In this whirlwind of emotions, the children ran into the room, excited to tell her something about the game they were playing, but they stopped when they saw their mother crying and their father with a hard expression. Silence was instantaneous, and Amanda knelt down to hug them, but they hesitated, exchanging confused looks before slowly approaching. When Amanda tried to pull them into her lap, Michael backed away, saying he wanted to stay with his father, while Lily cringed, asking to go to her room. The sound of Amanda's heart seemed to echo through the room, each beat louder and more painful, as she realized that she had lost not only her husband, but the trust and affection of the children she loved above all else. Jason, in a low voice, asked the children to go upstairs to play while he talked to their mother, and the little ones obeyed silently, but the way they avoided looking at Amanda said more than any words could express. When they were alone again, Amanda fell onto the couch, her arms falling heavily to her sides, her face drained of color. She whispered, in a whisper, that nothing she had done had ever been to hurt her children, that she had never imagined that her actions could take them away from her. Jason replied that perhaps that was the biggest problem, that she had not imagined anything, had not considered the consequences, had not thought of anyone but herself. The weight of his words seemed to crush her, and for the first time since everything had begun, Amanda understood the extent of what she had lost. Silent tears ran down her face as she shook her head repeatedly, as if to deny reality, but each memory of the absences, the lies, the moments when she had prioritized someone else over her family, came back like a punch that made her shudder. Jason finally sat down in front of her, held her cold hands and said that despite all the pain, he didn't hate her, but he also couldn't live in that illusion anymore. He explained that it wasn't just about physical betrayal, but about everything she had destroyed between them, the complicity, the respect, the security that sustained the family. Amanda began to sob loudly, saying that she couldn't bear to live without her children, that she would do anything to regain their trust. Jason, restrained, said that she would need to prove with her actions and a lot of time that she could change, but that she shouldn't fool herself. The children had already made their decision, and he wouldn't force them to do anything they didn't want to do. The sound of her sobs echoed through the room like a lament that spread to every corner of the house, mixing with the distant sound of Michael and Lily's innocent laughter, who played, oblivious to the hurricane that was forming inside the house they once called home. Amanda then stood up, her eyes swollen, her breathing uneven, and walked to the backyard door, watching her children from afar, as if an unbridgeable abyss separated them. Each of her movements seemed heavy, as if she carried tons of regret on her shoulders, and for the first time in a long time, she understood that there was no way to go back to the past, that there were no magic words to erase the wounds she had opened. As Jason watched her from afar, he understood that the revelation she had just made had changed everything forever, and that from that moment on, there was no more room for fantasies of reconciliation. He knew he would still have to fight, but he was ready to protect what he loved most, while Amanda discovered that losing her children's trust could be the greatest punishment that life could impose on her. Amanda stood there, watching her children play as if they were in an inaccessible world, each of their laughs sounding distant, like an echo that made her feel even more isolated. The sun was beginning to hide behind the heavy clouds, tinting the sky with orange tones that reflected the melancholy in her chest. Jason, who had remained close until then, moved away silently and began to pack some personal belongings into boxes he had left in the hallway. The sound of the objects being carefully packed sounded like a harbinger of the end, his every move marked by the determination of someone who no longer sought answers, but only the peace she so desperately needed. Amanda turned to him and, with a faltering voice, asked if there really was no chance of rebuilding everything. Jason, without looking away from what he was doing, calmly replied that loving was easy, but respecting and protecting the other person was what sustained a marriage, and that she had destroyed that. His words were not filled with anger, but with a resignation so deep that it pierced like a cold blade. Deciding not to let the children witness the tension between them, Jason suggested that Amanda leave for a while, that she go to a friend or relative's house, as he needed to talk to the children without her being there. Amanda hesitated, but Jason's firm gaze convinced her that there was no room for negotiation. Before leaving, she approached him, lightly held his hand and, through tears, confessed that she still loved him more than anything, but that she didn't know how to go back to being who he needed. Jason, looking into her swollen eyes, said only that sometimes love wasn't enough to keep people together, and that certain mistakes left scars that would never heal. Amanda walked out the door with dragging steps, carrying with her the weight of each word exchanged, while Jason remained still for a few moments, breathing deeply, as if seeking strength to face what was to come. When the children entered the house, Jason called them to sit at the kitchen table, the same place where so many happy moments had happened. He looked at them with sweetness and firmness, knowing that he would need to find words that would comfort them without lies, because their trust was now his highest priority. Michael, with attentive eyes and full of unusual maturity for his age, asked if their mother would come back to live with them, while Lily, hugging the teddy bear she carried everywhere, begged not to have to leave the house. Jason, with a choked voice, assured them that they would stay together and that he would do everything to keep them safe and happy, even if their mother had to be away for a while. The relief on the children's faces gave Jason a brief sense of hope, as if at that moment he could begin to rebuild something solid, even if it was just for the three of them. In the following days, Amanda tried to contact them in every way: messages, phone calls, notes left in the mailbox, requests to meet the children at times that would not disturb them. Jason read every word she sent with a heavy heart, but he understood that he had to stick to the decision he had made, because any hesitation could confuse his children and open the way for the pain to return. The children began to adapt to the new routine. Jason organized their backpacks, prepared meals, and reviewed schoolwork, all with a dedication that surprised even himself. The nights were marked by stories told in a soft voice, with tight hugs that said more than any promise, and with dreams that gradually became peaceful again. Jason, even exhausted, felt alive like never before, finding in each little smile of his children the motivation to continue. One afternoon, when she was picking up the children from school, Amanda appeared unexpectedly, approaching the car with anxious steps. Michael and Lily, upon seeing her, hesitated, but Jason got out first, intercepting her to avoid a scene that could traumatize them even more. Amanda begged to be allowed to hug them, saying that she needed to feel their smell, hear their voices, remember that she was still a mother. Jason allowed it, but remained by her side, watching her every move, as if afraid that any wrong word could reopen the wounds that were beginning to heal. Amanda hugged her children tightly, but she noticed the stiffness in their small bodies, the discomfort in their averted gaze, and she understood there, silently, that their trust also needed to be rebuilt from scratch. In the days that followed, Amanda sought help from therapists, read books on how to win back her children, participated in support groups, and sent reports of everything she had been doing to Jason, trying to show that she was willing to change. Jason, in turn, remained firm, always polite but cold, explaining that the rebuilding would take a long time and that he could not interfere in his children's decisions, since only they could choose whether they were ready to forgive. Michael and Lily began to ask about their mother more frequently, but always in a hesitant way, as if they were still afraid of getting hurt. Jason responded honestly, saying that she was trying to get better, but that the choice to see her was theirs alone. This freedom, although painful for Amanda, became the beginning of a healing process, as little by little the children began to accept short visits, meetings in public places, supervised conversations, always making their limits clear. On a Saturday afternoon, Jason took his children to a park where Amanda had arranged to meet them. It was the first time they would be together outside since their separation. The sun filtered through the trees, children ran across the lawn, and there was an air of serenity that contrasted with the tension in each of their chests. Amanda arrived punctually, dressed simply, her face free of makeup, as if to show that there were no more masks. When she approached, Lily took a step back, but Michael held his sister's hand, encouraging her to stay. Amanda smiled, her eyes welling up, and began to talk calmly about her week, asking about school activities, praising the drawings Michael showed in his notebook. Jason watched from afar, ready to intervene if necessary, but proud to see his children's courage in taking a small step toward healing. The reunion, despite their hesitations, went better than anyone could have hoped. When it was time to say goodbye, Amanda asked to take a picture with them. Michael and Lily reluctantly accepted, but the moment captured immortalized not only their reunion, but also the beginning of a painful and slow process of rebuilding. As Amanda walked away, she looked at Jason with gratitude and such genuine regret that for the first time he felt that perhaps one day he could forgive her, even if they could never be the same again. He understood that no matter what the future held, the most important thing was to make sure his children knew that they would always be loved, that they would never have to doubt that the home they had with him would be their safe haven. In the months that followed, Amanda began to visit her children regularly, always respecting what Jason had agreed upon. Their conversations became less tense, as they both understood that, despite all the suffering, they would need to coexist for the sake of Michael and Lily. Amanda made an effort to rebuild their bonds, arriving early to help with school events, sending letters to her children to show affection and apologize, and participating in family therapy sessions that helped them express their feelings in a healthy way. Jason, in turn, discovered an inner strength that he never imagined he had, reinventing himself as a father and as a man, building a new routine for himself and his children where joy gradually began to blossom again. One day, when he took his children to a bookstore to pick out new books, Jason met Emily, a sweet and kind woman who worked at the local cafe. Their eyes met as he ordered 2 hot chocolates, and the conversation flowed as if they had known each other for a long time. Michael and Lily smiled as they watched their father chatting animatedly, and for the first time since everything had fallen apart, Jason realized that his heart still beat for someone. Emily, with her light laugh and infinite patience with the children, brought a breeze of hope into their lives, and little by little she became closer, showing herself to be a warm and sincere presence that everyone came to admire. The afternoons were filled with walks in the park, reading afternoons, improvised picnics, and laughter that once again echoed through the house. Jason, previously consumed by grief, rediscovered the joy of living, while Amanda watched from afar, participating only when invited, but aware that life was moving forward for everyone. One night, while Jason was telling his children a bedtime story, Michael interrupted him to ask if Emily could have dinner with them one day, since he and Lily liked her. Jason smiled with emotion, hugged his children and promised that he would organize something special, feeling that, despite all the scars, the family heart was growing stronger again. At the end of that night, when he went downstairs to the living room, Jason found a message from Amanda on his cell phone, thanking him for the way he had handled everything, saying that, despite all the pain, she admired the man he was and that she would always be grateful for everything they had been through. Jason read the message in silence, took a deep breath and finally felt at peace. He knew that there would still be challenges, that the road to healing would be long and full of obstacles, but now, with his children by his side and the hope of a better future, he was ready to move forward, leaving behind the rubble of a past that, despite having been beautiful, had become unsustainable. As he went upstairs to kiss his sleeping children, Jason understood that some wounds never completely disappear, but that true love, the kind that is born of care, truth and respect, is capable of healing even the deepest pain. The new routine that Jason built with his children was a delicate balance between keeping the past where it belonged and building something new that could sustain them emotionally. Each day dawned with a promise of healing, but it also carried the risk of opening still sensitive wounds, because the memories of everything they had lived together still lurked in small, unexpected details: the smell of Amanda's shampoo, the music that played in the kitchen while they made pancakes on Sundays, her old coat that Lily would occasionally find in the closet and hold against her chest as if she wanted to find answers to a pain she couldn't explain. Jason had become a more attentive man than he had ever been, reading in his children's eyes what was not said, understanding silences that would previously have gone unnoticed, understanding that Michael was beginning to feel safer while Lily, even smiling, still needed time to trust that she wouldn't be abandoned again. Amidst this slow process, Amanda began to fulfill each commitment she made with punctuality and genuine dedication, never insisting on invading the space that Jason had clearly delimited. In brief meetings, she sought to get closer to her children with sincere questions, taking an interest in details of their routine, praising small advances in school, but always respecting the moments when they seemed insecure or distant. Over time, Michael began to talk more during these visits, telling them about soccer practices, showing them his test scores, sharing dreams that went beyond the nightmares that consumed him in the first weeks after the separation. Lily, however, remained more reserved, observing everything as if she were afraid of being hurt again, but she allowed small gestures of affection, such as accepting a quick hug or holding her mother's hand for a few moments before letting go. Jason, watching this progress, felt a mixture of relief and anguish, because each step his children took towards their mother was a reminder of what they had lost, but also a confirmation that he had made the right decision in not preventing them from getting closer. He began to see Amanda in a different light, no longer as the woman who had destroyed what they had, but as someone who, despite her unforgivable mistakes, was willing to face the consequences and fight for the chance to be a good mother again. This realization did not lessen the pain he carried, but it offered a new horizon, the possibility of building, even if apart, a healthier environment for the children. In moments of solitude, Jason reflected on how love can turn into something unexpected, how sometimes the greatest proof of affection you can offer someone is to let them go so they don't destroy what's left of yourself. The meetings with Emily became more and more frequent, but always respecting Michael and Lily's time. Jason felt rejuvenated by her lightness, he was enchanted by her ability to listen without judgment, to laugh at simple things, to create moments that made the children feel part of something special. Emily, in turn, approached the little ones gently, winning them over little by little, knowing that any hasty gesture could scare them. On afternoons in the park, she read stories to Lily while Jason helped Michael practice passing the soccer ball, and in those moments the feeling that something beautiful was being built brought warmth to everyone's hearts. Their home, which had previously echoed in heavy silence, once again had the sound of soft music, the smell of home-cooked food, and laughter that came spontaneously and naturally, filling the spaces that had once been filled with sadness. Amanda noticed this change even before Jason had the courage to talk to her about Emily. One rainy afternoon, when picking up the children for a walk, she asked quietly about the woman she had been hearing mentioned, and Jason, after hesitating for a moment, spoke frankly about how Emily had appeared in their lives, explaining that she was helping them all rediscover the joy they seemed to have lost. Amanda listened in silence, her face pale, her eyes distant as if trying to process each word, but surprised Jason by thanking him for waiting for the right moment to tell her, acknowledging that it was not easy for him to balance so many feelings. She confessed that she feared being forgotten by her children, but that she would rather see them happy with their father than drag them back into a toxic routine that would only hurt them more. While Amanda digested this new reality, Jason faced moral dilemmas that haunted him through sleepless nights. Would he be unfair in moving on while the mother of his children struggled to get back on her feet? Would he be robbing the children of the chance to see their parents together again, even if no longer as husband and wife? Or would he be teaching his children that, despite the setbacks, it is possible to rebuild a life with dignity and honesty? These questions haunted him as he prepared breakfast, folded school uniforms, paid bills, and drove the car to the children's classes. He feared that any misstep would reopen wounds, but he also knew that the paralysis, the endless waiting for something that would never be the same again, could destroy them all. Michael, who had always been more observant than talkative, began asking difficult questions, wanting to know why people lie, why people who love do things that hurt so much, why it was impossible to go back in time. Jason, with a calm voice but a broken heart, explained that everyone makes mistakes, that the difference lies in those who learn from their mistakes and do everything they can to avoid repeating them. He said that loving someone does not mean accepting being mistreated, but protecting yourself and those you love from the consequences of mistakes that cannot be corrected with apologies alone. Each answer demanded more from Jason than any negotiation in his career, because there was no manual, just the naked truth, told carefully so as not to traumatize, but also without disguising reality. Lily, who was slowly starting to smile again, asked with innocent curiosity if Emily liked her and her brother, if she was also afraid of people leaving, if she would ever be sad like her mother. Jason felt his chest tighten at these questions, but he saw in them an opportunity to teach empathy and courage, saying that everyone feels afraid sometimes, that even adults get sad, but that this doesn't mean they will stop loving or give up on the people who matter. He learned, every day, that being a father wasn't just about providing, but being a living example of what he would like to see reflected in his children: resilience, compassion, honesty, and the strength to move forward, even when everything seems to be falling apart. One night, while putting the children to bed, Jason was surprised by a tight hug from Michael, who said, with a choked voice, that he was proud of him, that he felt safe by his side and that, even though he missed his mother, he knew that with him he would always have love. Lily, a little embarrassed, joined in the hug, and in that moment Jason felt a peace he had not experienced in a long time. It was then that he decided that he needed to make this new phase of their life official, not only for him, but for his children, for Amanda and for anyone else who was part of that story that, despite being marked by deep pain, now had the chance to be rewritten with more truth and complicity. The following weekend, he invited Amanda to a coffee in the park where so many important conversations had taken place. When they arrived, she was surprised to see Emily sitting at a nearby table, but Jason reassured her, explaining that the time had come for everyone to talk like adults who, above all, loved Michael and Lily. Emily approached with a shy smile, and the three sat side by side, beginning a conversation that began tensely but softened as sincere words were spoken. Amanda expressed her fears of being replaced, confessed the pain of seeing her children happy without her, while Emily, calmly, said that she would never seek to take the place of a mother, but only to be someone the children could count on. Jason concluded by saying that the most important thing was to build a healthy coexistence, without lies, without arguments, where each person knew their role and respected each other's space. During that conversation, Amanda apologized again, but this time her words sounded less like a desperate plea and more like a genuine acknowledgement of her mistakes. Emily, in turn, assured her that she only wanted to contribute to the happiness of the little ones, reinforcing that no one could erase the mother that Amanda would always be to them. The conversation went on for hours, with emotional pauses, contained tears and looks that, despite everything, shared the common desire to protect the children from the chaos that adult life so often imposes. When Michael and Lily arrived, they ran to hug Jason and Emily, while Amanda, after a few seconds of hesitation, was welcomed by her children with shy but sincere hugs, as if they were beginning to forgive without forgetting. This meeting was a turning point. From then on, it became clear to everyone that the priority would be to maintain the children's emotional health, building a support network based on respect and responsibility. Amanda began to actively collaborate, arranging visiting days, participating in school meetings, proposing joint activities that allowed the children to see that, despite the separation, they could count on both parents. Emily showed herself increasingly willing to learn, to listen, to adapt to everyone's needs, earning not only the children's affection, but also a safe place in the new family dynamic. In the weeks that followed, the house once again heard sounds of joy, but now mixed with open conversations, where no one had to hide feelings or pretend that nothing had happened. Jason learned to celebrate small victories, like seeing Michael inviting Amanda to watch a practice, or Lily agreeing to do schoolwork with her mother without cringing in fear. He understood that happiness does not come from a perfect home, but from an environment where one can be imperfect without fear, where love is not conditioned by the absence of mistakes, but built on honesty and true repentance. And so, little by little, everyone began to find a way through the scars, knowing that the past could never be erased, but that the future could still be written with compassion and courage. That Saturday morning, Jason woke up before his alarm clock went off, the sky still dark outside, but his mind already filled with thoughts about the conversation he had planned to have with Amanda and Emily later, something that required courage and clarity to maintain the fragile balance they had achieved. He got up quietly so as not to wake Michael and Lily, went downstairs to make coffee while mentally organizing each point he needed to address. He knew that their lives were at a decisive moment, in which any mistake could mean regression, and that the dialogue needed to be firm but also welcoming. The aroma of fresh coffee filled the kitchen, bringing a sense of home that he had not felt in a long time, mixed with the anxiety of what was to come. When the children woke up, they came downstairs sleepy, but smiling when they found him already at the table, reinforcing in his heart the certainty that every effort was worth it. After breakfast, Jason took his children to a friend's house, where they would spend the day so that he could focus on the meeting he had arranged. When he returned, he tidied up the living room, moved the cushions off the couch, put water and coffee on the coffee table, and arranged the space so that there would be nothing that would distract from the importance of that conversation. The clock seemed to tick slower by the minute, and when Amanda arrived, shortly after the agreed time, her face was calm, but her eyes reflected insecurity. Emily appeared a few minutes later, greeting Amanda with a polite wave, and they sat across from each other, with Jason at her side, like a bridge between two worlds that needed to learn to coexist without destroying each other again. Jason began speaking in a calm but firm voice, explaining that their top priority should be Michael and Lily's emotional health, that any resentment between them could no longer affect the children. Amanda listened attentively, fidgeting with her hands nervously in her lap, while Emily kept her gaze fixed on Jason, as if seeking strength in each of his words. When he finished, Amanda took a deep breath and said that she understood the responsibility she had in rebuilding the relationship with her children, but that she still felt lost about how to act in moments when they distanced themselves or responded coldly. Emily, surprising them both, put her hand on the table and suggested that they could establish some rules together so that Michael and Lily would know what to expect from each of them, proposing, for example, fixed days for visits, phone calls at set times, and clear agreements on how to deal with the children's emotions. Emily's words brought a heavy silence to the room, as if everyone was digesting the simplicity and power of the idea. Amanda looked at her in surprise, but then her eyes softened, and she thanked her for the proposal, acknowledging that she would never have imagined having such a mature conversation with Jason's new partner. In the midst of this, Jason took the opportunity to express his fear that any hasty approach by Amanda could cause emotional relapses in the children, suggesting that they keep the family therapist involved in each more delicate decision. Amanda immediately agreed, saying that she also needed this support so as not to get lost in her own insecurities, and for the first time, Jason realized that the woman before him was not just the wife who had betrayed him, but a mother desperately trying to repair the bond she had broken. The conversation went on for hours, interspersed with pauses to breathe and regain control of the emotions that sometimes threatened to overflow. Emily revealed that many nights she woke up worried about being seen as an intruder, fearing that this would create more confusion in the children's heads, but she explained that the only thing she wanted was to see everyone well, as she considered herself part of the new family they were forming. Amanda, moved, said that although it deeply hurt to see them get closer, it was also comforting to know that the children were being loved by someone who truly cared. Jason, with tears in his eyes, thanked them both for the courage to expose themselves and for their effort in transforming a story of pain into a path of learning and respect. When the conversation seemed to have reached a point of understanding, Amanda asked, with a hesitant voice, if she could try to prepare a special lunch for the children on a Sunday, as they used to do, but this time with Emily present, so that Michael and Lily would see that the adults were united for their sake. Jason and Emily looked at each other, and after a few seconds, they agreed that it could be an important step, as long as the children were consulted first and that the therapist approved the idea. Amanda smiled through her tears, as if for the first time in a long time she felt hope of rebuilding, even if in a completely different way than she had once dreamed. Over the next week, Jason talked to his children, explaining that his mother wanted to invite them to a family lunch, but that they could decline if they didn't feel comfortable. Michael, after thinking for a few seconds, asked if his father and Emily would be there too, and when Jason said yes, the boy nodded shyly, saying that it would be okay, as long as his mother didn't pressure them with questions about forgiveness or things they weren't ready to answer yet. Lily, more reticent, simply hugged her father and asked him to stay with her the whole time, showing that, despite everything, she wanted to take a small step towards her mother. Jason promised that he would always be there, assuring her that nothing would make her feel alone or insecure. On the appointed Sunday, Amanda prepared her home with care, fresh flowers on the tables, old toys scattered around so that the children would feel welcome, photos of happy moments displayed in strategic places, but also some empty corners that reminded them that much still needed to be rebuilt. When Jason arrived with Emily and the children, Amanda welcomed them with a nervous but genuine smile. Michael and Lily entered slowly, taking in every detail, and were greeted with cautious but unwavering hugs. Emily helped Amanda organize the kitchen, and the two, amidst brief conversations about recipes and utensils, found an unlikely connection that surprised them both, realizing that, despite everything, they shared the same desire, to see those children smiling without fear. During lunch, Michael started talking about the soccer team Jason had signed him up for, excitedly telling him about a goal he had scored in the previous practice. Lily, sitting next to Amanda, showed her a drawing she had done at school, and although she was still shy, she allowed her mother to praise her and hug her briefly. Emily watched everything with a smile, participating only when the children included her, respecting Amanda's space and showing, with every gesture, that she did not intend to replace anyone. Jason, moved, felt as if he was witnessing the rebirth of something he had thought impossible, the chance for everyone to relate to each other in a mature and healthy way, putting the well-being of their children above their own pride or pain. After lunch, the children suggested playing a board game they had brought, and the room filled with laughter and playful teasing, in a mood so unexpectedly light that Jason feared it was just a dream. Amanda, in a moment of courage, asked to speak and, looking into her children's eyes, said that she knew she had made a lot of mistakes, but that every day she woke up determined to be a better mother, promising that she would never give up on them, no matter how long it took to rebuild their trust. Michael held her hand, squeezing it tightly, while Lily, her eyes shining, rested her head on her father's shoulder, showing that, even without words, they were willing to try. At the end of the day, as Jason was getting ready to leave with Emily and the children, Amanda walked up to him at the door, thanking him for trusting her enough to allow that moment. Jason, without needing to make any big speeches, replied that he was not doing it just for her, but mainly for the children, and that he hoped they would continue like this, always putting them first. Emily said goodbye to Amanda with a brief but sincere hug, and as they left, everyone felt that something important had been achieved, a kind of silent pact that marked the beginning of a new phase for that family that, despite being hurt, had decided not to give in to destruction. In the car, on the way back, Michael commented that he had enjoyed the day, but that he still needed more time to fully trust his mother, and Lily, in a soft tone, said that she thought her mother was really trying. Jason, moved, praised his children's courage for opening their hearts even though they were so afraid, promising again that they would always be together, that they would never have to face anything alone. Emily, holding Jason's hand discreetly, smiled at the complicity between father and children, feeling that, although there was a lot to be worked on, they were all on the right path. When they got home, Jason put the children to bed, singing a soft song that used to lull them to sleep at night in happier times, but which now sounded like an anthem of overcoming, reminding everyone that life, even after being torn apart by pain, can be mended with love, patience and courage. When he went down to the living room, he found Emily sitting on the couch, her eyes full of tears, saying that she deeply admired his strength and that she was happy to be part of this process. Jason hugged her with gratitude, feeling that, regardless of the scars, they had the chance to build a dignified and true future for everyone they loved. Winter arrived, bringing with it biting winds and shorter days, and with it the feeling that a phase was about to end definitively for all who had lived through the storm that shook that family. Jason, after months of balancing work, caring for his children and building a new relationship with Emily, felt that he was finally breathing lightly. His heart, previously shattered and full of distrust, began to beat peacefully again, and the nights were no longer filled with ghosts from the past, but rather with dreams of Michael and Lily growing up healthy, protected, free from the chains of pain that bound them to their mother's betrayal. He understood that true strength did not lie in ignoring pain, but in facing it every day with dignity, in being able to teach his children, with actions, that self-respect and honesty are worth more than any empty promises. In every breakfast shared, in every laugh during homework, Jason discovered that starting over was possible when one walks with courage. Amanda, in turn, remained steadfast in her attempt to repair what had been broken. The time she spent with her children was carefully planned so that it would be quality time, full of listening, affection and patience, but it was also permeated by moments when rejection would appear like a sharp knife, reminding her that there was no instant forgiveness for such profound mistakes. Every smile she managed to get from her children was celebrated as an intimate victory, but every suspicious look still hurt as if it were the first time. Amanda understood, as the weeks went by, that trust is as fragile as crystal, and that it is not enough to want to repair it, it is necessary to rebuild it with the delicacy of someone holding something irreparably cracked. She began to actively participate in family therapy, gave up professional opportunities to prioritize time with the children and, for the first time since everything fell apart, showed consistency in her attitudes, understanding that a mother's love is proven in daily actions, not in emotional speeches. Emily, who entered the family's life as an unexpected breath of hope, also found her place with wisdom and respect. She won Michael and Lily over with patience and honesty, never trying to force affection, but rather showing herself to be there when they needed her, allowing each gesture to be spontaneous. She built a relationship with Jason that was not based on haste or running away from past pain, but rather on the mutual desire to learn together, to do things differently, to create an environment where joy was a natural consequence of true love. Emily became someone who, even without blood ties, became an essential part of that nucleus, proving that families can form in unexpected ways when there is respect, understanding, and complicity. Michael, who had matured prematurely due to the events that had happened, learned to value sincerity above all else. His admiration for his father grew every day, not only because he was the man who protected him, but because he showed that a real man recognizes his own fears and still moves forward, taking care of those he loves. When Jason talked to him about feelings, Michael absorbed each word as a lifelong lesson, promising himself never to cause the pain he had witnessed so closely. Lily, with her resilient sweetness, gradually found the courage to trust the person who had hurt her, but she also built an increasingly strong bond with Emily, who had become a female role model for safe affection, someone with whom he could share childhood secrets and innocent dreams. One day, on a cold Sunday morning, Jason organized a picnic in a park full of trees covered in golden leaves that fell lazily in the wind. Amanda was invited to join them, and although hesitant, she accepted. There, on the soft grass, they set up a small improvised party with sandwiches, fruit and hot chocolate. The children ran among the trees, laughing loudly, while Jason, Amanda and Emily sat together for the first time since the lunch that had marked the beginning of an understanding. The air of peace that had hovered over them had seemed impossible months before, but it became real here, in front of the trees that witnessed the rebirth of their family. Amanda, with tears in her eyes, quietly thanked Jason for allowing her to remain in their children's lives, while Emily, with a soft smile, replied that there was no other choice when one truly loved oneself. As the sun began to set, the group gathered to pack up their things, but before they left, Jason asked for everyone's attention. With a firm but emotional voice, he spoke about how much he had learned since the day his life changed forever, about how he never imagined he would be able to forgive to the point of sitting like this, side by side with someone who had hurt him so deeply. He said there was no more room for hatred, but there was also no forgetting, that the scars would remain as reminders that trust must be protected as the most valuable treasure there is. Michael, holding his father's hand, asked if their family was fixed now, and Jason replied that it might never be perfect again, but that they were building something stronger than before, something based on truth and respect. On the way home, the children fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from playing so much, while Jason and Emily exchanged knowing looks, feeling ready to take the next step in their relationship. Amanda, following in her own car, looked at her children's serene faces in the rearview mirror and cried silently, but not out of despair, but out of gratitude for still having the chance to fight for their love, knowing that nothing could be taken for granted anymore. From that day on, family get-togethers became more frequent, but always respecting each person's time, and, as the months went by, Michael and Lily began to spontaneously invite their mother to school events, small parties and presentations, signaling that, little by little, the walls that separated them were beginning to be demolished. When Michael's birthday arrived, he asked everyone to be together at his party, including his mother and Emily, something that deeply touched Jason, who organized the event with unusual joy. During the party, amid colorful balloons and children running around the yard, Amanda was called to sing Happy Birthday alongside Jason and Emily, and at the end of the song, Michael hugged all three of them at once, as if he wanted to unite with his arms what life had separated. The simple but powerful gesture symbolized more than any words could express. Reconstruction was no longer a distant possibility, but a reality that was realized in the genuine smile of a child who finally felt safe and loved. At dusk, when all the guests had left, Jason and Amanda sat in silence in the garden, lit only by the soft lights that remained from the party. She thanked them once again for the opportunity to be there, and Jason said he didn't regret having allowed her to come over, because seeing their children happy justified every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of uncertainty they had faced. Emily appeared, bringing cups of hot tea, and sat next to them, completing the scene that, months before, would have been unthinkable. There, between confidences, memories and the serenity that only comes when facing pain with courage, they realized that the impossible had been overcome, that even the greatest betrayals can become lessons, and that love for children is capable of creating bridges where before there were only chasms. And so, with each one finding their place in this new configuration, Jason rebuilt not only his own life, but also those of Michael and Lily, showing them that dignity and the courage to start over are more valuable than any past they try to carry. Amanda, in turn, learned that love cannot be begged for, but rather earned every day with attitudes that demonstrate repentance and transformation. Emily, with her generous heart, found a family where she least expected it, proving that true love does not destroy, but rather welcomes and heals. And the children, so small and so strong, grew up learning that, even when everything seems to fall apart, truth and respect are the only foundations capable of sustaining a home. If you've made it this far, comment on what you thought of this story and share your opinion on the characters' choices. Take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel and continue following stories that make us reflect on what really matters. Always remember, betrayal destroys families, corrupts the purest love and leaves scars that may never be erased. Our channel does not support any form of betrayal and brings these stories to show the value of respect, loyalty, and the courage to face the consequences of our choices.